In the unending darkness between the stars, a silence reigns, so profound it seems to swallow sound itself. Across this void, our instruments listen, our telescopes gaze, searching for a whisper of familiarity, a pale blue reflection of our own world. We hunt for the signatures of water, the telltale breath of oxygen, the delicate chemical fingerprints of carbon-based biology. It is a search guided by a single, powerful assumption that life, wherever it may arise, must be fundamentally like us. But what if this assumption, born of our own lonely existence, is the very thing that blinds us to a grander, stranger truth? What if, on a world bathed in the light of an alien sun, life did not choose the versatile element of carbon as its foundation? Imagine a planet where the rivers flow not with water, but with liquid methane, under a thick orange sky, where temperatures plummet to hundreds of degrees below zero. Here, in this frigid, alien realm, what if life's fundamental building block was not the familiar stuff of flesh and leaf, but something else entirely? What if existence itself were chiseled from the element of stone and sand? What if alien life were silicon-based? To comprehend such a profound deviation from the known, we must first journey back to the very heart of our own biology. We must understand why we are who we are, creatures of carbon. Every living thing on Earth, from the smallest bacterium cowering in a hydrothermal vent to the great blue whale charting its course through the vastness of the ocean, is a symphony composed with the notes of the carbon atom. This element, number 6 on the periodic table, is life's indispensable architect. Its unique genius lies in its atomic structure, possessing 4 valence electrons in its outer shell. Think of these electrons as 4 versatile hands, each capable of grasping onto another atom to form a stable chemical bond. This tetravalent nature allows carbon to become the ultimate molecular Lego brick. It can link to itself, forming astonishingly long, durable chains called polymers. These chains are the scaffolding of biology, the very backbone of our existence. They can also branch out or curl back upon themselves to form intricate rings, creating a near-infinite variety of 3-dimensional molecular structures. From these simple principles of connection, nature has constructed everything. The spiraling double helix of our DNA, a molecule that can stretch for meters, is a testament to carbon's ability to store immense quantities of information. The complex folded proteins that act as our cellular machinery are masterpieces of carbon-based molecular engineering. Furthermore, the bonds that carbon forms are a masterclass in compromise. They are strong enough to create stable, lasting structures that can withstand the rigors of a dynamic environment. Yet, they are not so powerful as to be immutable. With a modest input of energy, these bonds can be broken and reformed, allowing for the constant fluid dance of metabolism, growth and adaptation. It is this perfect balance between stability and reactivity that makes carbon the undisputed champion of complex chemistry, and this champion has a perfect partner, water. Our planet is drenched in this remarkable liquid, and it is no coincidence that life here is inextricably tied to it. Water is often called the universal solvent, and for good reason. Its polar molecules act like tiny magnets, expertly pulling apart other compounds and holding them in solution. This allows it to be the perfect transport medium, a fluidic highway carrying vital nutrients into our cells and escorting metabolic waste products out. It facilitates the chemical reactions that power our bodies and regulates temperature with remarkable efficiency. The carbon and water paradigm is so successful, so utterly dominant on Earth, that for centuries it has been the only model we have seriously considered. This deeply ingrained perspective, often termed carbon chauvinism, has shaped our entire quest for extraterrestrial life. We design missions to Mars to follow the water. We point our most powerful telescopes toward distant exoplanets that orbit their stars within the so-called Goldilocks zone, that temperate narrow band where liquid water could potentially exist on a planet's surface. Our search has been a search for ourselves among the stars. But just beneath carbon on the periodic table lies another element, a silent challenger that shares its most crucial characteristic. This contender is silicon. Like carbon, it possesses 4 valence electrons, 4 hands reaching out to connect. On paper, it seems a perfect candidate for an alternative biochemistry, and unlike carbon, which is only the 15th most abundant element in the Earth's crust, silicon is the second, surpassed only by oxygen. It is the very substance of the ground beneath our feet. The universe is saturated with it, forged in the hearts of dying stars and scattered across the cosmos as stardust. If life is a game of chemical probability, of using what is most available, then silicon would appear to have a profound advantage. For decades, science fiction authors and speculative scientists, from H.G. Wells to the visionary Carl Sagan, have pondered the possibility of creatures built from this rocky element. They imagined beings of living crystal, sentient mountains, life forms utterly alien to our soft, aqueous biology. So why haven't we found them? Why does carbon appear to have won the day? The answer lies in the subtle but crucial differences between these two atomic cousins. While silicon can form long chains similar to carbon, called silanese, its bonds are significantly weaker. A silicon-silicon bond possesses less energy than a carbon-carbon bond, making these larger silicon polymers more fragile, more prone to breaking apart. Where carbon can build sprawling, resilient molecular edifices, silicon's constructions are more like delicate houses of cards, struggling to achieve the size and complexity needed for a genetic code or a metabolic engine. This inherent instability presents a formidable challenge to the emergence of complex life. Moreover, silicon chemistry displays a disastrous affinity for oxygen and water. Silanese, the silicon equivalent of hydrocarbons, are extremely reactive. In the presence of water, many of them would spontaneously break down. For a silicon-based creature on an Earth-like world, a simple rain shower would be a cataclysmic, flesh-dissolving event. Our world, so perfectly hospitable to carbon life, would be a chemical hell for a silicon being. But perhaps the most insurmountable obstacle, the true deal-breaker for silicon life in an oxygen environment, is a simple matter of waste disposal. When we carbon-based organisms metabolize our food, we combine carbon with oxygen. The resulting waste product is carbon dioxide, a gas. This is a stroke of biological genius. A gas is effortless to expel from the body. We simply exhale. It diffuses away, a simple, elegant solution to a universal biological problem. Silicon, however, does not enjoy this luxury. When silicon is oxidized, it forms silicon dioxide. This is not a gas. It is, in its most common forms, sand and quartz. It is a solid. Consider the profound, nightmarish implications of this. Imagine a life form whose every metabolic process, every conversion of energy, produces microscopic grains of rock as a byproduct. To survive, this creature would need an impossibly efficient biological system for constantly grinding, processing, and excreting solid matter from every single one of its cells. Its circulatory system would be perpetually at risk of becoming a clogged, abrasive sludge. Its respiratory surfaces would be scoured and fossilized. It would, in essence, be slowly turning to stone from the inside out. It is an engineering challenge so immense that many astrobiologists have dismissed the possibility of silicon life on any world with oxygen. If life built from stone is to exist anywhere in the cosmos, it cannot be in a world like ours. It requires a home so profoundly alien that our own biology could not survive it for an instant. We must therefore abandon the sun-drenched, watery worlds of our imagination and venture forth into the deepest, coldest reaches of the cosmos. Our destination could be a moon like Titan, Saturn's largest satellite, a world shrouded in a perpetual orange haze. Here, the fundamental rules of chemistry are rewritten by the tyranny of cold. The surface temperature hovers around -180 degrees Celsius, so frigid that water ice is no longer a soft, transient substance, but a mineral as hard and unyielding as granite. On Titan, water ice forms the bedrock and the mountains. But this world is not static. It has a weather cycle. It has liquids. The rivers, lakes, and seas are not filled with water, but with a mixture of liquid methane and ethane. Here, in this cryogenic bath of hydrocarbons, we may have found the one environment where silicon chemistry could have a fighting chance. At these extreme low temperatures, the crippling reactivity of silicon compounds is tamed. the destructive interactions with water are a non-issue, as any water is frozen into inert rock. The liquid methane could serve as a solvent just as water does on Earth, dissolving compounds and transporting them for metabolic processes. The very slowness imposed by the cold could be an advantage. The fragile silicon bonds, which would fall apart in the heat of an Earth-like world, might just be stable enough to hold together in the deep freeze. Life here would proceed on a timescale that is almost geological to us. Chemical reactions that take seconds in our cells might require years or even centuries to complete. A silicon-based organism on Titan would live a life of extreme slowness. A single thought, a fleeting electrical impulse in a carbon-based brain, might be a process that unfolds over the course of an entire day. Its lifespan would not be measured in decades, but in millennia, or perhaps eons. These beings would perceive time in a way we can barely comprehend, experiencing the slow erosion of an ice mountain as we might experience the fleeting passage of a cloud. The very atmosphere would be different. Instead of breathing oxygen, a highly reactive element that would create the quartz problem, perhaps these creatures would utilize hydrogen. Reacting silicon with hydrogen could create those gaseous Silones, providing a way to expel waste in a manner analogous to our own carbon dioxide. This world would orbit not a bright yellow star like our Sun, but perhaps a dim, ancient red dwarf. These stars are incredibly long-lived, offering trillions of years of stability, more than enough time for such slow, methodical life to evolve and flourish. What would such a being look like? The soft, pliable forms of Earth's creatures would be impossible. Silicon life would likely be crystalline in nature. We should not imagine humanoid figures, but rather structures of living mineral. Perhaps they would have exoskeletons forged from ultra-hard silicon carbide, with internal chemistries based on intricate self-replicating crystal lattices. Their flesh might resemble agate or obsidian, shimmering with metallic lusters. They might not move in the conventional sense, but grow, extending crystalline limbs over geological timescales, appearing to us as nothing more than an unusual rock formation. They could be living, breathing geodes, with complex internal organs protected by a shell of solid quartz. Their metabolism would be utterly alien. Lacking a powerful star to drive photosynthesis, they might get their energy from the planet itself. Perhaps they are chemosynthesizers, catalyzing chemical reactions between the minerals in the cryogenic ooze at the bottom of a methane sea. Or they could harness geothermal energy, thriving near vents that spew exotic, superchilled fluids from the moon's interior. An even more exotic possibility is that they could be powered by radioactivity. Drawing energy from the natural decay of elements within their planet's core, they would be untethered from the light of any star capable of living in the permanent absolute darkness of a rogue planet, flung loose into the interstellar void. How would such a creature perceive its universe? Our senses are tuned to our environment of air and light. A being of living rock on a world of methane might have a completely different sensorium. Vision as we know it might be useless in Titan's thick, smoggy atmosphere. Instead, they might see using sonar, emitting and receiving vibrations that travel through the dense liquid methane seas. Perhaps they could sense the subtle fluctuations in their world's magnetic field, navigating and communicating through invisible forces. Their primary sense could be seismic, feeling the deep groans and tremors of their world's icy crust as a form of direct perception, a way of being intimately connected to the body of their planet. Communication might not happen through sound waves, but through the slow exchange of complex chemical signals, or perhaps via patterned pulses of light generated by piezoelectric crystals within their bodies. Reproduction would be an equally strange affair. It might resemble the slow, patient process of crystal growth. An individual could release a seed crystal into the environment, a tiny, precisely structured fragment of itself containing its essential pattern. Over centuries, this seed would slowly accrete matter from the surroundings, organizing it according to its encoded instructions, gradually assembling itself into a new, fully formed being. Or perhaps two entities would merge, their crystalline structures interlocking to exchange information before budding off a new, hybrid creation. The question of intelligence in such a life form is one of the most profound and mind-bending challenges to our imagination. Could a being whose every thought process takes a century be considered intelligent? Our definition of consciousness is inextricably linked to the rapid firing of neurons in a warm, wet brain. Silicon intelligence, if it exists, would be something else entirely. It could be a vast, slow, distributed consciousness. Imagine not a single, individual mind, but a collective intelligence shared across an entire crystalline reef spanning hundreds of kilometers. Its thoughts would not be about momentary survival or fleeting emotions, but about deep geological time. It might contemplate the subtle changes in its moon's orbit over 1,000,000 years, or the slow, grand dance of its gas giant parent and its neighbouring moons. Its philosophy would be one of permanence, its art form the patient sculpting of rock by chemistry. It would be a consciousness of stone, dreaming geological dreams. The discovery of such life would represent the most profound paradigm shift in human history, a moment that would irrevocably alter our understanding of our place in the universe. But it also presents a monumental challenge. How would we ever find it? Our entire astrobiological toolkit is designed to find carbon copies of ourselves. The James Webb Space Telescope analyses the atmospheres of distant worlds for water vapour and methane imbalances that could signal carbon-based biological activity. Our rovers on Mars are equipped with drills and lasers to search for the organic molecular signatures of past or present carbon life. These methods are entirely unsuited to detecting slow, crystalline, silicon-based organisms thriving in a methane sea. To find them, we would need to begin a new kind of search. We would need to look for anomalies of a different sort. Instead of searching for oxygen, we might search for atmospheres rich in hydrogen and selenes. We would have to look for strange thermodynamic disequilibriums on intensely cold worlds, subtle heat signatures or chemical imbalances that defy purely geological explanations. A mission to Titan would need to be equipped not with drills to pierce rock, but with sonar to map the methane seafloor, and robotic submarines capable of operating in cryogenic fluids. It would need instruments that could recognize the intricate patterns of a living crystal and distinguish them from the random geometry of a dead one. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, would also need a radical reimagining. We listen for rapid, patterned radio signals, assuming any intelligent species would communicate at the speed of electromagnetism. But what kind of signal would a billion-year-old crystalline consciousness send? It might be a message encoded in the slow modulation of its planet's magnetic field. It might be a signal so patient, with a single bit of information transmitted every 1,000 years, that to our frantic, short-lived perspective, it would be utterly indistinguishable from background noise. We might be bathed in the broadcast of a silicon civilization right now, but are simply too fast, too impatient, and too biologically different to notice. The confirmation of silicon-based life would be a humbling and exhilarating revelation. It would shatter our carbon chauvinism once and for all, proving that life is not a miraculous chemical fluke limited to our narrow set of environmental conditions. Instead, it would reveal life to be a universal imperative, a fundamental property of matter that will emerge wherever conditions allow, using whatever chemical tools are at its disposal. It would mean that life is not just the soft, wet, fragile thing we know. It is also hard, cold, and enduring. It can be born in fire and water, but also in ice and methane. This realization would force us to redefine the very concept of life. Perhaps the true definition has nothing to do with carbon or water or DNA. Perhaps life is simply a system that can sustain itself against the relentless pull of entropy. It is a process of localized, complex organization, a way for the universe to encode information and create novelty. Whether that information is stored in a carbon-based double helix or a silicon-based crystal lattice is merely a local detail. The underlying principle, the cosmic struggle for order against chaos, remains the same. We stand at the shore of a cosmic ocean, having only just dipped our toes in the water. Our search has been focused on the shallows, looking for our own reflection, but the true wonders may lie in the unexplored depths, in the cold, dark places where the rules are different. Out there, perhaps, on a world we have not yet dreamed of, a silent, crystalline mind is slowly contemplating the stars. It grows, it thinks, it exists, a testament to the fact that the universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it is stranger than we can imagine. The search for life is not just a search for aliens, it is a search for the limits of possibility itself, and the discovery that we are not the only form of life will be second only to the discovery that we are not the only form of thought. High above the swirling currents of the Pacific, where the atmosphere thins into a fragile veil, the world of man ends and the abyss begins. On the summit of Mauna Kea, the air is a thief, stealing the warmth from the skin and the oxygen from the blood. Here, within the silver dome of an observatory that stands as a silent sentinel against the coming night, a lone astronomer sits in the dim glow of a workstation. The year is 2024. Outside, the wind howls a mournful dirge against the steel skin of the telescope, but inside there is only the hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic steady pulse of a human heart. The astronomer leans forward, his forehead nearly touching the cold glass of the monitor. He exhales, and a small translucent cloud of mist blooms upon the screen, momentarily obscuring the data. In this fleeting moment, the scale paradox of our existence is laid bare. That puff of warm air, a byproduct of biological life, is a chaotic dance of trillions of molecules, yet it is utterly insignificant when measured against the vacuum that waits just beyond the roof. His breath is a temporary smudge on the window to the cosmos, a warm defiance against a universe that is on average 270 degrees below zero. As the mist clears, a single pixel remains. It is a solitary point of white light, no different to the untrained eye than a grain of salt spilled upon a black velvet shroud. It does not flicker. It does not twinkle with the atmospheric turbulence that plagues the stars of our own galaxy. It is cold, steady, and utterly alien. This is the first pixel of the Voidenixian epoch, a tiny digital ghost that carries with it the weight of an existential catastrophe. The astronomer traces the trajectory of this dot with a trembling finger. The software, a complex mechanism of logic and mathematics, has calculated its path through the silent dark. It is not bound by the gravity of our sun. It does not follow the circular or elliptical waltz of the planets that have called this solar system home for 4,600,000,000 years. Instead, it moves upon a hyperbolic trajectory, a terrifyingly straight line that betrays its origin in the interstellar void. It is an interloper, a fragment of a world that was never meant to be seen by human eyes. Consider the scale of this encounter. The astronomer is a creature of carbon and water, 6 feet of fragile biology perched upon a volcanic rock. The pixel on his screen represents a mass of frozen stone and metal several miles wide, screaming through the vacuum at 30,000 miles per hour. Yet, in the vast tapestry of the cosmos, both the man and the mountain of rock are less than nothing. If the universe were the size of the Earth, the entire solar system would be a speck of dust, and this incoming object would be a single atom drifting within that speck. We find ourselves trapped in the scale paradox, where the smallest spark of consciousness is tasked with witnessing the movements of titans across an abyss so vast that light itself takes years to cross it. This pixel is a messenger from the oblivion. It has travelled through the lightless desert between the stars for eons, passing through the remnants of dead suns and the cold ashes of forgotten nebulae. It is a sentinel of the deep time, a relic of a primordial era that predates the very birth of our world. As the astronomer watches, he realizes that this dot is not just a physical object, but a symbol of the inexorable nature of the cosmos. The universe is a ruthless machine, governed by laws that do not care for the survival of the witness. Entropy is the only true currency, and this visitor is a reminder that the sanctuary of our inner solar system is an illusion. The object has been named by the machines that first glimpsed it, but to the man in the dark, it is simply the beginning of the end of the old world. He thinks of the billions of souls sleeping below the cloud line, oblivious to the fact that their reality has just been irrevocably altered by a single bit of data. He feels a profound sense of melancholic optimism. It is a tragedy that our first true contact with the deeper cosmos should be so cold and silent, yet it is a miracle that we have built the tools to see it at all. We are the universe seeking to understand itself, a collection of atoms that has learned to name the stars. The pixel represents a planetary fragment, perhaps the heart of a world that was torn asunder when its parent star collapsed into a white dwarf or was devoured by a black hole. It is a piece of a celestial corpse, a remnant of a catastrophe that occurred before the first multicellular life crawled out of the Terran oceans. Now, it enters our domain, unbidden and unyielding. The astronomer watches the numbers crawl across his screen, written out in the silent language of the machine, confirming that the path of the object will bring it within a hair's breadth of our own fragile home. In the scale of the cosmos, a hair's breadth is measured in millions of miles, yet the proximity feels intimate, like a whisper in a crowded room. The void is no longer an abstract concept. It has taken form. It is a jagged, dark silhouette against the background radiation of the Big Bang. The astronomer imagines the surface of the object, a landscape of frozen nitrogen and obsidian shards, untouched by the light of a sun for 1 billion years. It is a place of absolute silence, where the concept of sound has no meaning, and the passage of time is marked only by the slow decay of radioactive isotopes. He feels a shiver that has nothing to do with the temperature of the observatory. It is the chill of the eternal. We spend our lives preoccupied with the trivialities of the moment, the flickering shadows on the cave wall, while the great mechanisms of the universe grind on in the darkness. This pixel is a crack in the door, a glimpse into the furnace of reality. It tells us that we are not the protagonist of this story, but merely accidental spectators to a symphony of destruction and creation that began long before we arrived and will continue long after our spark has vanished. The Voidonixian epoch has begun not with a roar, but with a flicker on a liquid crystal display. It is the first pixel of a new map, one that includes the terrifying reaches of the interstellar abyss. The astronomer knows that he must report this finding, that he must alert the world to the presence of the sentinel. But for a few more minutes he chooses to remain in the silence. He wants to be the sole witness to the majesty of the catastrophe. He wants to feel the weight of the void pressing against his chest. As the Earth rotates, carrying the observatory away from the patch of sky where the interloper lurks, the astronomer looks one last time at the screen. The pixel is still there, a tiny unblinking eye watching us from the porch of the solar system. It is a grain of soot in a cathedral of light, a reminder that we are small, that we are temporary, and that the universe is vast beyond all comprehension. Yet in the act of seeing we transcend our insignificance. The void may be infinite and the abyss may be hungry, but for this one moment the darkness has been mapped. The first pixel has been claimed. The epoch of the great silence has found its voice. The memory of the first interloper remains a scar on the collective consciousness of the astronomical community, a spectral presence that haunts the halls of our observatories. We remember the one that escaped, the visitor known as Oumuamua, which streaked through our inner sanctum with the indifference of a god. It was a missed opportunity that tasted of ash, a brief flicker of light that vanished into the dark before our most powerful eyes could be turned toward it. For years, the scientific world existed in a state of quiet mourning, a frustration born from the realization that we'd been caught unprepared by the grand theatre of the cosmos. We'd glimpsed a relic from another star system, a piece of alien history, only to watch it dissolve back into the abyss, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and a sense of profound inadequacy. We were like children watching a rare bird take flight, unable to describe its feathers or the song it sang before it disappeared into the forest of the night. Yet the universe, in its cold and mechanical indifference, has granted us a second chance. This time, the horizon is not unguarded. We have placed sentinels upon the ramparts, 3 massive eyes known collectively as the Triple Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, now scan the heavens with a tireless and unblinking gaze. These are not merely telescopes. They are the early warning systems of a species that has grown weary of its own blindness. They are the guardians of our fragile bubble of light, searching for the slightest ripple in the fabric of the void. And it is through these three pillars of glass and silicon that the ghost has returned, though in a different form. The detection was not a moment of triumph, but one of icy realization. The data points began to coalesce into a trajectory that defied the established order of our neighbourhood. The calculations reveal a number that sends a tremor through the foundations of celestial mechanics. The object possesses an eccentricity of 1.45. In the silent language of gravity, this is a declaration of independence. Any object with an eccentricity greater than 1 is not a resident of this place. It is a fugitive from the interstellar dark. It is a hyperbolic wanderer that does not recognise the sovereignty of our sun. To comprehend this is to understand the terrifying velocity of the interloper. It is not orbiting, it is transiting. It is a stray bullet that has entered a quiet room, a projectile of primordial stone and frozen volatiles that has been travelling through the vacuum for eons, long before the first city was ever raised by human hands. The metaphor of the stray bullet is apt, for it highlights the violent reality of the cosmos. The solar system is a place of rhythmic cycles, a clockwork mechanism where every planet and moon follows a predictable and ancient path. We have grown accustomed to this stability, lulled into a sense of security by the repeating patterns of the seasons and the tides. But the visitor is an intrusion, a chaotic element that shatters the domestic peace of our local space. It comes from the direction of the Cygnus constellation, the celestial swan that stretches its wings across the Milky Way. When we look up at those stars, we see a tapestry of light that seems fixed and eternal, a backdrop to our small lives. Yet, from that vast and distant nursery, this fragment was cast out, perhaps by the death of a star, or the gravitational dance of two warring giants. Herein lies the scale paradox, the cognitive dissonance that arises when we compare the tools of our perception with the objects of our study. Consider the lens of the telescope, a few feet of polished glass, a fragile and meticulously crafted piece of human ingenuity. It is a tiny window, no larger than a dining table, yet it is through this minuscule aperture that we attempt to measure the magnitude of the infinite. We are using a grain of sand to weigh the mountain. The Cygnus constellation spans hundreds of light years, a region of space so immense that the human mind cannot truly grasp its volume. It contains millions of suns and untold billions of worlds, yet our entire understanding of this new visitor is distilled through a few inches of glass on a lonely mountaintop. The lens is a bridge across the void, a fragile link between the domestic and the cosmic. It is the witness to a catastrophe that occurred in the deep past, capturing the light of a remnant that has crossed the terrifying reaches of the interstellar abyss. The frustration of the past has been replaced by a frantic, cold energy. The scientific community is no longer mourning. It is mobilizing. We have been given a reprieve, a chance to redeem our previous failure. But as we turn our instruments toward the visitor, the existential weight of the moment begins to settle upon us. This object is a sentinel from the oblivion, a messenger from a part of the universe that will forever remain beyond our reach. It is a reminder that the void is not empty, but filled with the debris of 1 billion failed worlds and the ashes of forgotten epochs. Each data point we collect is a syllable in a story that we are only beginning to learn how to read. We are watching a piece of the eternal unravel before us. The object does not care that it is being observed. It does not slow its pace for our benefit. It continues its inexorable journey, a silent traveller through the symphony of the stars. We feel the melancholic optimism of the witness, the bittersweet realization that while we are small and temporary, we are the only part of the universe that can look back at the darkness and name it. We are the consciousness of the cosmos, the eyes through which the abyss contemplates itself. The 3 sentinels of the alert system have given us a front row seat to the majesty of the catastrophe, and as the visitor draws nearer, we prepare to face the truth of our position in the tapestry of time. We are no longer merely looking at a pixel on a screen. We are looking into the throat of the infinite, and for the first time, we are not looking away. The crossing occurs at a threshold invisible to the naked eye, yet profound in the ledger of our understanding. 45 astronomical units from the warmth of our parent star, the visitor enters the graveyard of a light. At this distance, the sun is no longer a source of heat or a bringer of days, but merely the brightest star in a sky of infinite blackness. It is a region of the solar system where the solar wind begins to falter, and the cold breath of the interstellar void becomes the dominant force. Here, in the dim reaches of the Kuiper belt, the visitor passes an invisible line that has, until now, marked the limit of our detailed perception. It is a place where the shadows are absolute, and the silence is a physical weight, a primordial realm that has remained unchanged for 4 billion years. To witness this moment, we have orchestrated a celestial dance of unprecedented complexity, a symphony of machines across the abyss. 2 sentinels of human consciousness, separated by a distance so vast that radio waves take hours to bridge the gap, have turned their sensors toward the same point in the nothingness. The James Webb Space Telescope, a golden eye suspended at the second Lagrange point, and the New Horizons probe, a weary traveller drifting through the outer darkness, have synchronized their clocks to a billionth of a second. They are waiting for an occultation, a brief and terrifying moment when the visitor passes in front of a distant, nameless star. This is the scale paradox at its most visceral. The James Webb Space Telescope, a marvel of modern engineering, consists of 18 hexagonal segments of gold-plated beryllium. Each segment is polished with such meticulous precision that if it were the size of a continent, the largest imperfection would be no taller than a blade of grass. This fragile arrangement of metal and glass, no larger than a small house, is tasked with capturing the faint silhouette of a titan. On the other side of the void, the New Horizons probe, a craft no bigger than a grand piano, acts as the secondary witness. We are using these 2 tiny artificial specks to measure a mass that could swallow the history of our world in a single impact. The precision of our mirrors is being weighed against the massive dark silhouette of an object that has crossed the interstellar desert for eons. As the visitor moves, it blinks. For a fraction of a heartbeat, the light of a star billions of light years away is extinguished by the passing of this intruder. This is the breakthrough. By comparing the exact timing of this blink from 2 different vantage points in the solar system, we can begin to construct a map. We are not seeing the object with light, but by the absence of light. We are mapping the void within the void. This occultation map reveals the shape of the visitor, a jagged and irregular remnant of a catastrophe that occurred in another corner of the galaxy. It is not a sphere, but a fractured sentinel, a shard of a world that never was or a world that once was and is no more. The data streaming back to Earth is a series of zeros and ones, a digital ghost of the truth. But to those who wait in the silent laboratories, it is a revelation. We see the jagged ridges and the deep craters of an object that has never felt the touch of a sun. We see the remnants of primordial gases frozen into an icy skin, a testimony to the absolute zero of the interstellar abyss. The 45 astronomical unit threshold is where the visitor finally loses its anonymity. It is no longer a mere mathematical probability or a stray pixel on a screen. It has a shape. It has a presence. It is a physical reality that occupies a specific coordinate in the tapestry of space and time. This moment represents the triumph of the mechanism over the oblivion. We have extended our nervous system to the very edge of the sun's domain. Through these machines, we are touching the face of the unknown. Yet, there is a profound melancholy in this victory. The more we know about the visitor, the more we realize how small we are. The 45 astronomical unit mark is a reminder of the vastness that surrounds our fragile oasis. It is a graveyard of light because the photons from our sun are so spread out, so lonely, that they can no longer illuminate the dark. We are looking into a region where the laws of our daily lives do not apply, where time is measured in epochs, and distance is a concept that defies human intuition. The synchronization of the James Webb Space Telescope and the New Horizons probe is a testament to our refusal to remain blind. We are the only part of the universe that has developed the capacity to look back at the darkness and demand an answer. We have turned our most sophisticated tools toward the abyss, and for the first time, the abyss has yielded a secret. The occultation map is our first true portrait of the visitor, a portrait of a shadow. It shows us an object that is indifferent to our existence, a silent traveller that has been moving through the cosmos long before our species learned to walk, and will likely continue its inexorable journey long after our voices have faded into the eternal silence. As the data continues to trickle in through the deep space network, the scale paradox becomes even more haunting. We are analysing the chemical composition of a rock billions of miles away, using the same logic we use to bake bread or drive a car. We are applying the domestic rules of our small world to the grand, ruthless machine of the universe. The visitor is a remnant of a forgotten epoch, a piece of the primordial cloud that gave birth to the stars. It carries within it the history of the galaxy, a history of ignite and decay, of the birth of suns and the death of worlds. By measuring its silhouette against the stars, we are reading the prologue of our own story, written in the language of the void. The breakthrough at the edge of the solar system is not just a scientific achievement, it is an existential pivot. We have proven that the consciousness of the witness can transcend the limitations of the body. We are sitting on a small blue planet, yet through our machines we are standing at the threshold of the infinite, watching a dark giant cross the graveyard of light. There is an optimism in this, a belief that knowledge is a shield against the catastrophe. But it is a melancholic optimism, for we know that the more we see, the more we realise what remains hidden in the shadows. The visitor is drawing nearer, and while we have mapped its shape, we have yet to understand its intent, or if the concept of intent even exists in the cold, unfeeling mechanism of the cosmos. We are no longer merely observers, we are participants in a cosmic drama that is beginning to unravel, a symphony of light and shadow that will define our place in the tapestry of the eternal. The data streaming across the vast distances of the deep space network is no longer a mere silhouette of a shadow. It is a physical weight, a cold reality that is forcing a radical revision of everything we thought we knew about the wanderers of the void. For decades, our understanding of these celestial visitors was defined by a specific, almost domestic image. We called them dirty snowballs. We imagined them as fragile remnants of the primordial cloud, loose heaps of cosmic rubble and frozen gases held together by the faint shivering hands of gravity. We pictured them as something akin to a crumbling sponge, porous and delicate, shedding their layers as they approached the warmth of a star. This was a comforting model. It suggested a universe that was messy, organic, and ultimately temporary. But as the spectroscopic data and gravitational measurements of 3i Atlas solidify, that comfort is being stripped away, replaced by the realization that we are facing a singular entity of terrifying integrity. The visitor does not crumble. It does not bleed gas into the vacuum. It does not behave like a relic of a chaotic birth. Instead, it moves with the relentless, unyielding precision of a ball, bearing machined to a tolerance that defies human manufacturing. Where we expected the gaps and holes of a cosmic sponge, we find a non-porous mass of incredible density. It is a monolith of such structural perfection that it challenges the very mechanism of how we believe matter is assembled in the dark. This is the core anomaly. If the standard comets of our solar system are the discarded scraps of a construction site, 3i Atlas is a finished component, a dark jewel forged in a furnace we have yet to name. To understand the scale paradox at work here, one must first confront the sheer impossibility of this density. In our daily lives, we're used to the idea of solid things, a rock, a piece of steel, a lead weight. But in the vastness of the abyss, most things are empty. The stars themselves are mostly light and gas, and the great clouds of the nebulae are thinner than the most perfect vacuum we can create on Earth. The planets are often bloated giants of hydrogen, or crustal shells over liquid interiors. But this visitor is different. It is a singular, rigid mass that suggests it was not merely gathered by gravity, but pressed into existence by forces that transcend our local physics. It is as if the universe, in its inexorable march through the eons, decided to create something that could survive the end of time itself. Imagine a crumbling sponge held in your hand. It is light. Its structure is a web of air and thin filaments, and if you squeeze it, it collapses. This has been our model for the messengers from the Oort cloud for over 70 years. We saw them as relics of a gentle accretion, a slow gathering of dust in the silent cold. But 3i Atlas demands a different metaphor. Imagine instead a precision-machined ball bearing, made of an unknown dark metal. It is heavy for its size. It is smooth, reflecting nothing. It is a single, continuous piece of matter with no internal voids, no hidden pockets of gas, and no structural weaknesses. This is what we're seeing at the edge of the solar system. The density of the visitor is so high that it suggests a manufacturing process by the stars themselves, perhaps in the crushing depths of a planetary core that was later shattered, or within the intense gravitational well of a dying sun. This density is a signature of the ruthless machine of the cosmos. It tells us that this object was not born in the soft nurseries of gas where our own world began. It was born in a catastrophe. It is a remnant of an epoch of violence that occurred so far away and so long ago that its origins are lost to the oblivion of time. By looking at its lack of porosity, we are looking at the evidence of an immense pressure, a force that squeezed out every atom of emptiness until only this rigid sentinel remained. It is a dark mirror to our own fragility. We are creatures of air and water and porous bone, living on a world of thin crust and shifting plates. We are the crumbling sponge. The visitor is the ball bearing, an indifferent traveller through the eternal silence, unaffected by the heat of suns or the cold of the void. The scale paradox becomes haunting when we realize that this singular mass is moving through a region of space that is defined by its emptiness. In the graveyard of light, where the sun is but a bright needlepoint in the black, this dense object represents a concentration of reality that is almost offensive to the vacuum. It is a knot in the tapestry of the universe. Our instruments, designed to measure the light and the lean, are struggling to account for the sheer presence of this object. We are using the same mathematics that describe the motion of a grain of sand to track a mountain of such density that it seems to anchor itself to the very fabric of space-time. There is a profound melancholy in this discovery. We had hoped that by reaching out to the visitor, we would find a cousin to our own world, a piece of the same primordial clay. We wanted to find a bridge to the past, a way to understand the gentle beginnings of our own history. Instead, we have found a stranger. We have found a machine of nature that does not care for the warmth of stars or the presence of life. 3i Atlas is a testament to the fact that the universe can produce entities of such endurance and such cold perfection that they make our entire civilization look like a fleeting breath on a winter pane. It is a reminder that the cosmos is not just a garden of light, but a forge of incredible power, capable of creating objects that will endure long after the stars we navigate by have gone dark. As we continue to analyze the data, the existential pivot becomes unavoidable. We are the witness, the consciousness that has evolved to perceive the symphony of the cosmos. But the symphony we're hearing now is not a melody of life. It is the rhythmic, metallic clanging of an inexorable mechanism. The visitor is not a messenger. It is a fact. It is a physical proof that out there in the vast reaches of the abyss, there are processes that operate on a scale of pressure and time that we can barely conceive. We are looking at a fragment of a lost world, a piece of the eternal that has been cast out into the void to wander forever. The transition from the dirty snowball model to this new reality of the machined ball bearing marks the end of our cosmic childhood. We can no longer look at the sky and see only the soft and the familiar. We must now acknowledge the hard and the alien. The visitor is a sentinel of a deeper truth, that the universe is vast and cold, and filled with things that do not need us to exist. It is a singular, non-porous mass that has survived the journey through the graveyard of the light, and as it draws nearer to our fragile oasis, it remains as silent and indifferent as the stars that birthed it. We are watching the unravelling of our old myths, replaced by the heavy, dense reality of an object that was made by the cosmos to last forever, while we are merely here to watch it pass by. As our senses strain to resolve the silhouette of the visitor against the backdrop of the distant stars, we encounter a physical impossibility. We expected the glint of ice or the dull grey of primordial stone, but what we have found is a hole in reality. The object does not merely exist in the darkness, it is the darkness. It possesses an albedo of 0.02, a value so low that it effectively erases the three-dimensional form of the entity from our perception. To look upon it is to look into a puncture in the tapestry of the cosmos, a visual silence that refuses to echo the light of our own sun. On our own world, we have struggled to create materials that can mimic this level of absolute negation. We have engineered forests of carbon nanotubes to trap the light, creating a substance we call vantablack, a coating that makes the most intricate sculptures look like flat, two-dimensional voids. But nature, in its cold and indifferent workshop, has produced this effect on a scale that dwarfs our laboratory triumphs. The visitor is wrapped in a shroud that swallows 99.9% of all incoming radiation. It is the skin of a black hole draped over a physical mass, a garment of total oblivion that has been tailored by eons of exposure to the abrasive winds of the interstellar medium. When a photon strikes this surface, its journey ends in an instant of total absorption. It is not reflected, nor is it scattered. It is devoured. The microscopic topography of the visitor's exterior acts as a labyrinth of ultimate efficiency, a series of jagged nanoscopic canyons that bounce the light inward until its energy is entirely dissipated as heat, leaving nothing for our cameras to capture. This is the ruthless machine of entropy at work, a surface designed by the vacuum to be the perfect scavenger of energy. In the graveyard of light, where every spark of radiation is a precious commodity, this object stands as a monument to the end of all things. This darkness is not merely a superficial quality, it is a sentinel that guards a deeper, more terrifying truth. As we transition our perspective from the scale of the individual photon to the scale of the entire mass, the scale paradox begins to weigh upon our understanding. Beneath this impossible shroud, shielded from the prying eyes of the universe, lies an interior of crushed perfection. The data suggests that the visitor is not a simple rock, but a metallic planetary core, a relic of a world that was torn asunder before our sun was even a glimmer in a nebular cloud. We are looking at the heart of a dead giant. Imagine the pressure required to forge such a density, the unimaginable catastrophe that must have stripped away the crust and mantle of a planet to leave only this iron and nickel heart exposed to the void. It is a metallic core that has been polished by the passage of millions of years, yet now hidden under a layer of cosmic soot that ensures it will never again reflect the light of a star. This is the ultimate hiding place. Within the abyss of its own making, the visitor carries the history of a lost solar system, a narrative written in the crystalline structures of its metallic lattice, yet it refuses to share that history with the light. The existential pivot here is profound. We are the witnesses to an object that has evolved to be invisible. In a universe where we use light to map the heavens, to measure the distance to the furthest galaxies, and to understand the composition of the stars, we have encountered an entity that rejects the very medium of our knowledge. It is a silent traveller in a silent sea. The metallic interior, a solid, non-porous mass of incredible weight, moves with an inexorable momentum that ignores the gentle pressures of light that steer the comets of our own system. It is a bullet of pure mass, wrapped in a cloak of pure shadow. This shroud of 0.02 albedo serves as a reminder of the vastness of the things we cannot see. We often think of the void as empty, a simple absence of matter, but the visitor proves that the void is also a place where matter can hide. where the most dense and powerful objects can wander for an eternity without ever betraying their presence. It is a phantom of the cosmos, a fragment of a ruined epoch that has survived the unravelling of its home system to drift through the eternal night. As we analyse the boundary between the absolute black of the surface and the cold metal of the core, we realise that we are looking at the ultimate expression of cosmic endurance. The visitor does not need to be seen to exist. It does not need the warmth of a star to maintain its integrity. It is a machine of survival, a testament to the fact that the most durable things in the universe are often those that are the most hidden. The abyss does not just exist between the stars, it travels with them, contained within the surfaces of objects that have learned to swallow the light. We are left to contemplate the lonely journey of this metallic sentinel. It has crossed the great void, moving through regions of space so empty that it might not have encountered a single stray atom for 1,000 years. Throughout that journey, its dark skin remained unchanged, a perfect shield against the radiation of the cosmos. It is a piece of the eternal, a remnant of a catastrophe that happened so long ago that the light from the event has already reached the edge of the visible universe. And yet the core remains, dense and cold, a silent passenger in a shroud of Vanta black. In the presence of such an object, our own history feels like a fleeting whisper. We are a species that thrives on light, that builds our civilizations in the warmth of a yellow dwarf star, and that seeks to illuminate every corner of our world. But the visitor is a citizen of the darkness. It is at home in the oblivion. As it draws closer to our fragile oasis, it remains as indifferent as ever, a reminder that for all our searching and all our observing, there are parts of the universe that will always remain beyond our reach, tucked away beneath a surface that swallows 99.9% of the truth. We are watching the passing of a ghost, a metallic heart beating in the centre of a self-made abyss, drifting through the tapestry of space toward a destination we can never know. It was Dr. Aris Thorne who first dared to peer through the shroud of shadow and into the very heart of the visitor. While others saw only a void in the star charts, a silent ghost haunting the edges of our perception, Thorne sought the mechanism beneath the skin. He looked not at the light that was swallowed, but at the light that was bent. Through the meticulous study of gravitational lensing data, a subtle and shimmering distortion of the distant galaxies behind the object, Thorne revealed a truth that defied the chaotic nature of the cosmos. The visitor was not a random coagulation of interstellar dust nor a jagged remnant of a shattered moon. It was an expression of perfect order. The data suggested a structure of impossible rigidity, a solid state matrix composed of carbon and nickel, fused together in a way that should not occur in the cooling heart of a dying star. Thorne hypothesized that we were looking at a crystalline lattice of such immense scale and precision that it transcended our understanding of material science. It was a discovery that shifted our perspective from the study of a mere object to the contemplation of a grand architecture. To understand the magnitude of this revelation, we must embrace the paradox of scale, journeying from the microscopic foundations of matter to the titanic proportions of the traveller itself. Imagine, if you will, descending through the layers of the visitor, leaving behind the crushing weight of the vacuum and entering the realm of the atomic. Here, in the silent dark of the interior, there is no chaos. There is no random drift of isotopes or the messy entanglement of impurities. Instead, we find a symphony of geometry. At the molecular level, the atoms are locked in a perfect crystalline cage, an endless repetition of carbon and nickel atoms held together by forces that have resisted the erosion of eons. In a natural asteroid, we would expect to see fractures, pockets of gas, and the irregular scars of 1 billion years of collisions. But within the Thorne matrix, there is only the absolute. Every atom is a sentinel standing in its assigned place within a 3-dimensional grid that stretches for hundreds of meters in every direction. This is the crystalline lattice, a structure so stable that it could endure the heart of a supernova without unravelling. It is the ultimate expression of cosmic endurance, a material born from a mastery over the very building blocks of the universe. In this microscopic abyss, The lattice acts as a bridge between the primordial past and the distant future, a testament to a process that favoured the eternal over the ephemeral. But as we zoom out, retreating from the microscopic perfection of the atoms, the scale paradox begins to take hold. That which is a perfect, delicate grid at the molecular level becomes a weapon of pure mass at the macroscopic level. The lattice aggregates into a massive needle-like shape, a silhouette that is over 600 metres long and yet barely 80 metres wide. It is a spear cast into the void, a sliver of concentrated geometry hurtling through the dark with an inexorable momentum. From a distance, the visitor appears as a thin line of shadow, a needle of obsidian stitching together the vast tapestries of the interstellar void. It is here that we see the true beauty of Thorne's hypothesis. The object is not merely a vessel or a rock, it is a unified whole. The crystalline lattice provides the structural integrity required for such an extreme aspect ratio, allowing the object to withstand the tidal forces of suns and the immense gravitational pulls of gas giants without snapping like a dry twig. It is a masterpiece of engineering, whether by the hand of a distant intelligence or the rare, freakish coincidence of an unknown cosmic forge. This is the symphony of geometry. Every vibration that passes through the object, every subtle tug from a passing star, is distributed across the lattice with mathematical precision. The visitor does not ring like a bell. It absorbs the energy of the cosmos and dissipates it through its interlocking bonds, maintaining its stoic silence. It is a machine of stillness, a monument to the idea that the universe, in all its entropic decay, can still produce or play host to a form of absolute perfection. Dr. Thorne argued that the carbon-nickel matrix was more than just a structural choice. It was a shield. The dense lattice of carbon provides a barrier against the high-energy particles that permeate the cosmos, while the nickel core offers a weight and a stability that anchors the object in its lonely trajectory. Together, they create a sentinel that is nearly immune to the ravages of time. While stars ignite and gutter out, while civilizations rise and fall into oblivion, the lattice remains. It is a remnant of an epoch where the rules of creation might have been different, or perhaps it is a glimpse into a future where matter is finally tamed. As the needle of the visitor slices through the local bubble of our solar system, we are forced to confront the cold reality of our own fragility. Our world is a place of soft edges, of shifting tectonic plates, and of biological life that withers in a few short decades. We are a species of the temporary, living on a planet of dust and water, but the visitor is something else entirely. It is a crystalline ghost, a rigid and unyielding passenger in the eternal night. It does not breathe, it does not change, and it does not decay. It simply is. The gravitational data continues to flow into our observatories, confirming the rigid geometric nature of the entity. Each new measurement reinforces Thorne's vision of a solid-state traveller. There are no hollow spaces within, no chambers for air or light. It is a solid needle of crystalline order, a fragment of a lost world or a messenger from a distant one, carrying within its lattice the secrets of a material science we have yet to even imagine. We look at the needle and we see a mirror of our own desire for permanence. We build our monuments out of stone and steel, hoping they will stand for 1,000 years. But the visitor has been travelling for millions, perhaps billions, of years. Its lattice has survived the collapse of its home system and the slow, cold journey across the great gulfs between the stars. It has moved through the absolute zero of the void and the searing radiation of the open cosmos, and through it all, its atoms have remained locked in their perfect dance. It is a silent, metallic heart beating at the centre of the dark. The symphony of its geometry is a song that no human ear can hear, a mathematical harmony that exists only in the cold precision of the Thorne matrix. As it continues its journey, moving toward the inner reaches of our system, it remains as indifferent as the stars themselves. It is a reminder that the universe is not just a place of chaos and heat, but also a place of structure and cold, enduring beauty. The lattice is its soul, a grid of carbon and nickel that holds back the abyss, a crystalline sentinel that will continue to drift through the tapestry of space long after our own sun has turned to a white dwarf and our history has been forgotten in the silence of the eternal. Yet, beneath the cold perfection of its carbon-nickel shell, the visitor reveals a mystery that defies the very laws of the interstellar dark. In the vast, lightless stretches of the cosmos, there is a thermal baseline that governs all matter. Far from the influence of any sun, in the reaches where the light of the stars is nothing more than a faint distant memory, the temperature of the void settles at 3 degrees above the absolute floor of physics. This is the remnant glow of the birth of the universe, a thin veil of warmth that has stretched across eons until it is almost nothing. Every wandering rock, every shard of ice, and every dead planet that drifts in this abyss should, by all rights, be frozen into a state of total stillness. They should be 3 degrees above absolute zero, indistinguishable from the vacuum that surrounds them. But as our sensors calibrate their sensitive instruments to the needle-like sentinel, they detect a heartbeat of heat that should not exist. The visitor is not cold. It maintains a constant, steady temperature of 40 Kelvin. To our human sensibilities, 40 Kelvin is a temperature of unimaginable frost, a state where oxygen turns to liquid and then to a brittle solid. But in the context of the deep void, it is a roaring bonfire. It is a thermal defiance that suggests an internal engine, a hidden mechanism of energy that has survived the journey across the light years. This is the scale paradox in its most haunting form. We must imagine a forest the size of 1,000 worlds, a cathedral of ancient black trees whose branches weave into a canopy so dense that no starlight ever touches the ground. In the centre of this infinite frozen woodland there sits a single dying ember. To the traveller standing at the edge of the forest, the cold is absolute and inexorable. The vastness of the dark is so overwhelming that the concept of warmth seems like a myth. But for the visitor, that 40 Kelvin heartbeat is that ember. It is a tiny flickering flame in a cathedral-sized forest, a localized rebellion against the entropy that seeks to devour the entire cosmos. It is a point of heat in a universe of ice, and its existence demands an explanation. Scientists have labored to understand how a solitary object, adrift for millions of years, could preserve such warmth. One possibility lies in the very atoms that compose its core. Deep within the nickel matrix there may be a concentration of decaying isotopes, heavy elements forged in the cataclysm of a long-forgotten supernova. These primordial atoms are unstable, their nuclei held together by forces that are slowly, inevitably failing. As they unravel, they release a minute amount of energy, a subatomic radiation that warms the lattice from within. It is a slow, methodical decay, a clock made of unstable matter that ticks across the epochs. In this scenario, the visitor is a radioactive tomb, carrying the dying energy of its birth star across the abyss. Each atom that splits is a tiny spark, a microscopic ignition that keeps the 40 Kelvin fire burning, while the universe outside remains a frozen graveyard. But there is another, perhaps more poetic possibility. The heat may not come from within the atoms themselves, but from the invisible grip of the cosmos. As the visitor moves through the galaxy, it does not travel through a true vacuum. It sails through shifting tides of gravity, the unseen currents produced by the dance of stars, the weight of dark matter, and the pull of the galactic centre. These forces act upon the rigid structure of the needle like the hands of a giant kneading a piece of clay. This is gravitational friction, a process where the very fabric of space-time pulls and pushes at the carbon-nickel lattice, creating internal tension. The molecules rub against one another in a silent microscopic struggle, generating heat through the sheer force of resistance. In this view, the visitor is a musical instrument being played by the gravity of the galaxy itself. The 40 Kelvin heartbeat is the thermal vibration of its strings, a song of friction produced by its inexorable movement through the tapestry of the void. This faint warmth transforms the visitor from a mere object into something that feels almost biological. It is a thermal signature of existence, a sign that the entity is still interacting with the universe, still processing energy, still refusing to fade into the absolute zero of oblivion. We look at this 40 Kelvin glow, and we see a mirror of our own metabolic struggle. We are creatures of heat, our bodies maintained at a precise temperature by the constant burning of chemical fuel, while the world around us shifts and cools. We are tiny fires in the dark, and in the visitor, we recognize a kindred spirit of sorts. It is a machine, or perhaps a fragment of a world, that has found a way to stay warm in a universe that wants only to turn it to ice. The significance of this heat cannot be overstated. If the warmth is the result of decaying isotopes, it tells us of the environment where the object was born, a place rich in the heavy elements of a dying star. If it is the result of gravitational friction, it tells us of the incredible speeds and the long winding path the object has taken through the dark. Either way, the 40 Kelvin heartbeat is a message. It is a signal that the visitor has a history, an internal life that is separate from the cold vacuum it inhabits. It is a sentinel that carries its own sun within it, a remnant of an epoch of fire that refuses to be extinguished. As the needle continues its journey toward the inner reaches of our solar system, the 40 Kelvin glow remains steady. It does not ignite into a blaze as it nears our sun, nor does it flicker as it passes through the shadow of the giant planets. It is a constant, a fixed point of warmth in a shifting cosmos. We watch it with a sense of melancholic wonder, realizing that this heat has likely been there for 1 billion years and will remain for 1 billion more. It is a mechanism of endurance, a way for matter to transcend the frozen silence of the abyss. The visitor is a testament to the idea that even in the heart of the void there is a pulse. Even in the deepest cold there is a trace of the energy that once defined the beginning of time. It is a 40 Kelvin heartbeat, a lonely and beautiful defiance that echoes across the silent vastness of the eternal night. We are left to contemplate the fate of such an object. Eventually the isotopes will all decay, the last of the heavy atoms splitting into lead and stability. Eventually the gravitational tides may change, or the object may find a stable orbit where the friction of its journey fades into nothingness. But for now, in this moment of our brief history, the ember still glows. We are the witnesses to this thermal miracle, the observers who have tuned our instruments to the right frequency to hear the faint, infrared hum of its survival. The visitor does not care that we watch. It does not seek our warmth or fear our cold. It simply continues its trajectory, a solid needle of crystalline order, carrying its 40 Kelvin secret through the dark, a tiny spark of defiance in the face of the encroaching oblivion. As this silent traveller penetrates deeper into the heart of our solar system, we wait for the familiar transformation. We look for the awakening that defines every other wanderer from the outer dark. When a comet from our own Oort cloud, that distant frozen nursery of primordial ice, approaches the sun, it begins to weep. It sheds its skin in a chaotic, beautiful exhalation of water vapour, carbon dioxide and methane. These are the volatiles of life, the messy, fertile ingredients that once seeded the oceans of Earth. We expect a tail, a shimmering veil of gas and dust that announces the object's presence to the heavens. We expect the frantic, messy boiling of a world coming back to life. But from the visitor, there is only a deafening silence. Our instruments scan the void, searching for even a single molecule of water, a stray atom of carbon, or the faint signature of methane. We find nothing. The visitor is chemically ghost-like, a sterile needle of such profound purity that it defies the very logic of our planetary formation. It does not outgaze, it does not crumble, it does not leave a trail of breadcrumbs for us to follow. While our local comets are like dirty snowballs, teeming with the potential for biological complexity, this object is something else entirely. It is an artifact of absolute sterility, a fragment of matter that has been stripped of every volatile element, leaving behind only the most stubborn and resilient core. This absence of water is more than a chemical curiosity. It is a profound ontological shock. To us, water is the medium of existence, the solvent of the soul. To see a mountain-sized object move through the cosmos without a drop of moisture is to look upon a skeleton and wonder how it ever moved. The visitor is a bone of the universe, a desiccated remnant of a process we can only dimly imagine. It is as if we have found a surgical instrument, crafted from polished chrome and carbon steel, lying in the damp, muddy floor of a prehistoric cave. The contrast is total. On one side, we have the biological messiness of Earth, a world of rot and growth, of humid air and salty tides. On the other, we have this needle, a shape of impossible precision and terrifying cleanliness, cutting through our atmosphere of steam and oxygen without being touched by it. We must consider the history of such a thing. To be this dry, to be this sterile, requires an ordeal of fire and time that exceeds the life cycles of most stars. It is likely a fragment of a dead sun's heart, a piece of a world that was torn apart when its parent star collapsed into a white dwarf or exploded in a supernova catastrophe. This is matter that has been forged in the furnace of a dying epoch, then cast out into the abyss to be sandblasted by interstellar dust for millions of years. Every jagged edge has been worn down, every volatile molecule boiled away by the radiation of 1,000 suns, until only this dense, metallic or crystalline sliver remains. It has been polished by the very vacuum itself, honed by the relentless friction of the interstellar medium, until it became the sleek, aerodynamic phantom we see today. This is the essence of the scale paradox. We, the observers, are creatures of the wet and the warm. We are a collection of fragile membranes and liquid flows, living on a planet that is essentially a giant swirling chemical reaction. We are messy. We are entropic. We are constantly exchanging matter with our environment, breathing in the exhaled waste of plants and drinking the recycled runoff of the mountains. But the visitor is a closed system of one. It is a monolith of indifference. It does not interact with its surroundings because it has nothing left to give and nothing left to take. It is a masterpiece of cosmic minimalism, a solid state entity that has transcended the need for the chemical complexity that we call life. As we compare this sterile needle to the fertile comets of our Oort cloud, the gulf between our world and the wider galaxy becomes an abyss. Our comets are the cousins of our oceans. They are the remnants of the nebula that birthed us. They are familiar, even in their coldness. But this visitor is a stranger from a different order of reality. It represents a history where the ingredients for life were either never present or were scorched away eons ago. It is a fragment of a graveyard, a piece of a celestial tombstone that has been travelling through the void since before our sun was a flicker of gravity in a cloud of gas. The silence of the visitor is its most powerful message. It tells us that the universe is not merely a garden of potential life, but also a vast, cold machinery of destruction and preservation. For every earth that blooms with the green fire of photosynthesis, there must be 1,000,000 sterile needles, the shrapnel of failed systems and exhausted stars. We look at the object and we feel a sense of profound loneliness, not because it is empty, but because its emptiness is so complete. It is a reminder that the biological abundance of our home is a rare and precarious miracle, a thin layer of moisture clinging to a rock. In a cosmos that is otherwise characterized by the absolute zero of the void. The visitor is the sentinel of the inanimate. It is the witness to the end of all things. When we look at its dark, unreflective surface, we are looking into the future of our own solar system. One day, our sun will swell and then shrink, our oceans will boil into the vacuum, and the very bones of the earth will be ground into dust by the tides of a dying star. Perhaps then, a fragment of our own world, stripped of its water and its memories, will be cast out into the interstellar night. It will be polished by the same dust and cooled by the same abyss, becoming a sterile needle for some other civilization to find in their own distant epoch. They will wonder at its purity and they will feel the same melancholic chill that we feel now. For now, the needle continues its trajectory, a silver sliver cutting through the black tapestry of the heavens. It is a mechanism of endurance, a testament to the fact that matter can survive the death of worlds if it is willing to let go of everything that makes it alive. It is a cold, hard truth moving at 50,000 miles per hour, a reminder that in the grand symphony of the cosmos, the most enduring notes are often the ones that are never played. We are the witnesses to this sterile miracle, the observers of a void that has taken the shape of a needle, reminding us that we are the exception, and the silent, polished dark is the rule. Through this lens, the visitor is not just an intruder, it is a mirror, reflecting the inevitable stillness that awaits all things in the inexorable march toward oblivion. The three silver slivers, known to a forgotten history as the Eye Atlas, do not feel the passage of time. To these monuments of solid-state engineering, the journey from the star-rich heart of the Cygnus constellation is not a voyage of miles or kilometers, but a slow, cold descent into the architecture of eternity. They were cast out from their home system during an epoch so distant that the very arrangement of the night sky would be unrecognizable to a modern observer. When they first ignited their engines to escape the gravity of their progenitor star, the Earth was a world of strange, primordial beasts, and the atmosphere of our planet held secrets that have long since been buried under layers of stone and salt. For 10 million years, these sentinels have drifted through the absolute zero of the interstellar void. To understand the scale of this transit is to acknowledge the utter insignificance of the human experience. While these three needles moved through the dark, the entirety of human history was compressed into a single, frantic heartbeat. Empires rose from the dust of the Levant and returned to that same dust before the visitors had crossed even a fraction of the abyss between the stars. The great glaciations of our world, the carving of the continents, and the slow evolution of the primate mind are but fleeting flickers of light in the corner of a blind eye. The Eye Atlas exists in a state of being that transcends the frantic chemical urgency of life. They are the artifacts of a patience that the biological mind cannot truly comprehend. The void through which they travel is not truly empty, but it is as close to nothingness as the cosmos allows. It is a tapestry of thin gas and ancient dust, the remnants of stars that died billions of years before the first spark of life appeared on our world. As the three probes move at speeds that would vaporize any atmosphere, they are occasionally struck by single atoms of hydrogen or microscopic grains of silicate. Each impact is a tiny, silent catastrophe, a microscopic explosion that leaves a microscopic scar on their polished surfaces. Over the eons, these scars have accumulated, turning the once brilliant mirrors of their hulls into a dull, pitted grey. They carry the history of the interstellar medium on their skin, a record of every cloud of dust and every stray photon they have encountered in their lonely transit. From their perspective, the galaxy is a slow, rotating mechanism of fire and shadow. They have watched from afar as nebulae collapse to ignite new suns, and they have witnessed the silent, violent deaths of ancient giants. They have sailed past the wreckage of solar systems that never saw the rise of a single soul, and they have drifted through the gravitational wake of black holes that devour the very fabric of time. To the Eye Atlas, the universe is not a garden, but a vast and indifferent engine, an inexorable machine that grinds suns into dust and turns galaxies into ghosts. They are the witnesses to the unravelling of the cosmos, the silent observers of a symphony that has no audience. The scale paradox of their existence is a weight that pulls at the edges of our understanding. We are a species that measures time in seasons and lifetimes, yet we look upon objects that measure time in the movement of tectonic plates and the rotation of the galactic arms. A human life is a spark in the night. A civilization is a brief campfire on a vast and windy plain. But the Eye Atlas are the eternal embers. They have survived the decay of their creators, outlived the very memory of the world that birthed them, and moved beyond the reach of any god or king. They are the remnants of a will that refused to be extinguished by the void. a testament to the fact that even in a universe defined by entropy, something can endure. As they approached the boundaries of our own solar system, they had already travelled across a distance of 60 trillion miles. In that time, the constellations they once knew had shifted and drifted, the stars themselves moving like slow-motion dancers in a dark ballroom. The Cygnus they left behind is no longer the Cygnus they see when they look back. The primordial alignment of their birth has been lost to the inexorable march of stellar drift. They are truly orphans of the cosmos, 3 silent travellers with no home to return to and no destination other than the next patch of empty space. We see them now as an anomaly, a strange intrusion into our local neighbourhood of planets and moons. We struggle to find meaning in their presence, to assign a purpose to their sterile forms. But the truth is far more chilling. Their purpose was fulfilled millions of years ago. They are now merely the momentum of a dead world, the lingering echoes of a scream that was uttered in a distant epoch. They do not care for our curiosity. They do not acknowledge our existence. To them, the Earth is just another gravity well, a minor curvature in the geometry of the void that must be navigated or ignored. The voyage of the Eye Atlas is a reminder that the universe is vast beyond all reason and old beyond all memory. We are the inhabitants of a single moment, a brief and fragile epoch of warmth and light. Beyond our thin shell of air, the abyss stretches out forever, filled with the ghosts of failed experiments and the silent transit of forgotten machines. We look at these 3 visitors and we see our own future reflected in their pitted hulls. One day the light of our sun will fade, the oceans will be lost to the vacuum, and the works of man will be reduced to a handful of sterile needles drifting through the dark. They are the sentinels of the inevitable. They are the proof that matter can transcend the frailty of flesh, but only by becoming as cold and as silent as the void itself. As they continue their journey, moving away from our sun and back into the interstellar night, they carry with them the final lesson of the cosmos. Everything that ignites must eventually decay. Every symphony must reach its final note. And in the end, there is only the silence of the eternal machines, moving through the dark toward an oblivion that waits for us all. The Eye Atlas do not fear the end, for they are already a part of it. They are the polished fragments of a reality that has already passed, moving through a universe that has already forgotten them, toward a future that is as vast and as empty as the heart of a dying star. The sun begins its final and most terrible transformation. 5 billion years have passed since the age of man, an interval of time so vast that the very mountains of Earth have risen and fallen into the sea 1,000 times over. The nuclear furnace at the heart of our star, having exhausted the hydrogen that sustained it for eons, begins to collapse under its own weight, only to ignite the helium in a desperate and violent expansion. The sun swells, turning from a familiar yellow orb into a bloated and crimson monstrosity. It becomes a red giant, a celestial titan that devours the inner planets with a slow and rhythmic cruelty. Mercury is the first to be consumed, its iron core melting into the solar plasma like a drop of wax in a furnace. Venus follows, its thick and suffocating atmosphere stripped away, until nothing remains but a scorched and featureless husk that is eventually pulled into the fiery abyss of the solar crown. Earth, the cradle of all we ever knew, does not escape this final catastrophe. The oceans that once hummed with the songs of great whales and the rhythmic movement of tides are boiled into a searing mist, blown into the void by the relentless pressure of the solar wind. The atmosphere, the fragile blue veil that allowed us to gaze at the stars with a sense of wonder, is torn away, leaving the surface exposed to the full fury of the dying star. The valleys where poets contemplated the nature of love and the mountains where empires were built are reduced to a landscape of molten glass and charred rock. In this far future epoch, the Earth is no longer a garden. It is a silent monument to a biological dream that has long since ended. It is a cinder, a relic of a time when matter dared to become alive and conscious. Far beyond the reach of this fiery expansion, the three Atlas Sentinels continue their journey through the interstellar night. They are hundreds of light years away now, drifting through the dark between the stars. To these machines, the destruction of the sun is merely a shift in the intensity of a distant point of light, a minor fluctuation in the cosmic background. They do not mourn the loss of the world that crafted their hulls. They do not register the extinction of the species that programmed their trajectories and calculated their path through the vacuum. They are cold, inanimate, and utterly indifferent to the fate of their creators. They carry within them the geometry of our thoughts and the refined materials of our industry, but they possess no memory of the hands that polished their lenses or the minds that dreamed of their voyage. They are the remnants of an ancient will, moving through an abyss that has no centre and no destination. The Atlas units have become part of the background architecture of the galaxy. Their metallic shells, once gleaming with the pride of a young civilization, are now pitted and scarred by the impact of microscopic dust grains. They have survived the decay of their makers and outlived the very memory of the world that birthed them. They are the eternal embers of a fire that went out long ago. As they move through the void, they encounter the remnants of other stars and the cold clouds of gas that will one day form new worlds. They are witnesses to a history that no one is left to record. They are the sentinels of the inevitable, moving toward an oblivion that waits for every structure and every thought in this unfolding universe. And yet, it is here, at the very edge of our extinction, that we find the existential pivot. We must contemplate the nature of the witness. For a brief and flickering moment in the history of the cosmos, a collection of atoms became self-aware. On a small blue planet circling an unremarkable star, the raw matter of the universe began to wonder where it came from. We were the mechanism through which the cosmos achieved a state of reflection. We looked up at the void and did not see a vacuum, but a tapestry. We named the constellations, we measured the speed of light, and we launched these three needles into the dark as a message to a future we knew we would never see. This is the melancholic optimism of our story. Our presence in the universe was a fleeting symphony, a short burst of music in an eternity of silence. But the music happened. The fact that the universe was observed at all is what gives it a voice. Without the eyes of the sentient, the stars would burn in a theatre with no audience. The Atlas units are the physical proof that we existed, that we reached out, and that we dared to understand the mechanism of the machine that eventually dismantled us. Though we are gone, and though the Earth is a charred remnant lost in the glare of a dying sun, the fact of our observation remains carved into the timeline of the cosmos. We were the ones who saw the needle in the dark. We were the ones who turned the void into a home, if only for a brief and shining moment. As the three sentinels move toward the edges of the galaxy, they carry with them the only thing that truly matters. They are the evidence that once, against all odds, the universe woke up and looked at itself. We were the witnesses to the majesty of the abyss, and in our looking we made the universe more than just a collection of cold equations. We gave it a history, we gave it a name, and though we are small, and though our time was short, we were the ones who dared to stare into the eternal silence and speak. The Atlas Sentinels continue their journey, moving into the deep dark of the coming eons, carrying the ghost of our curiosity into a future where the stars themselves will eventually fade and die. They are the final testament to a species that refused to be forgotten, even as it was swallowed by the inexorable march of entropy. In the end, there is only the silence of the eternal machines, moving through the dark toward an oblivion that waits for us all. But that silence is no longer empty. It is filled with the echo of our questions and the lingering light of our discovery. We have left our mark upon the infinite. We have been part of the cosmic symphony, and even as the last notes fade, the beauty of the performance remains. The universe is vast, cold, and indifferent. But for one brilliant epoch it was known. It was loved. And that, in the heart of the great void, is enough. The journey of the three Atlas Sentinels is our journey, a transit from the light into the dark, a testament to the fact that we were here, we were awake, and we were the ones who saw the stars.